In the middle of San Francisco Bay sits a lonely island. Cold winds, strong tides, and dangerous waters surround it. On that island stood the toughest prison America ever built, Alcatraz. Most people just called it the Rock. Welcome back to our channel. This was supposed to be escape-proof. The government said no one could ever break out, and if they tried, they'd never make it across the bay alive. But in June of 1962, 3 men pulled off one of the boldest escapes in U.S. history, and then disappeared without a trace. Did they drown in the freezing waters? Or did they actually make it to freedom? More than 60 years later, the Alcatraz escape is still one of America's biggest unsolved mysteries. Alcatraz opened in 1934. It was designed to hold the worst of the worst, dangerous, violent men who had caused trouble in other prisons. The island's location made it perfect. Surrounded by water with icy temperatures and strong currents, it seemed impossible for anyone to swim across to San Francisco. Inside, life was tough. The cells were tiny, the food was bland, and the rules were strict. Guards watched every move. Prisoners had almost no contact with the outside world. Alcatraz was meant to crush any hope of escape. And it wasn't just any criminals locked up here. Some of the most famous names in American crime spent time on the Rock. Al Capone, the legendary Chicago mob boss. George, Machine Gun, Kelly, a ruthless gangster and kidnapper. And Robert Stroud, the so-called Birdman of Alcatraz. For years, Alcatraz lived up to its reputation. Dozens tried to escape, but every one of them was either caught, killed, or drowned. At least, that's what the authorities claimed. But in 1962, 3 men decided they weren't going to die on the Rock. The ringleader was Frank Morris, a sharp, clever man with an IQ of 133. He'd spent most of his life in and out of prisons, and he was known for escaping before. Alongside him were the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, 2 bank robbers from Georgia. They grew up swimming in cold water, which gave them an advantage if they ever made it off the island. The 3 of them started planning their breakout months in advance. Their idea was simple but brilliant. Each of their cells had a small ventilation grill at the back. Behind it was an empty service corridor. If they could break through the wall, they could move freely behind the cell block. Using spoons stolen from the cafeteria and a homemade drill built from a vacuum cleaner motor, they slowly chipped away at the crumbling concrete. To cover the sound, they timed their work with the prison band's music practice. To hide the holes, they painted cardboard pieces to look like the wall and wedged them in place. Night after night, they worked. It took months, but eventually, the holes were big enough to crawl through. Then came the second part of the plan, how to escape the island itself. Over time, they collected more than 50 raincoats. They stitched them together into a makeshift raft and life jackets, sealing them with heat from the prison's steam pipes. They carved wooden paddles from scrap materials. And to fool the guards during bed checks, they crafted fake heads out of plaster, soap, and real human hair taken from the prison barbershop. At night, these dummy heads lay on their pillows, looking just real enough to pass. On the night of June 11, 1962, the plan went into action. After lights out, Morris and the Anglin brothers slipped through the holes in their cells, climbed up the pipes into the service corridor, and made their way to the roof. From there, they carefully slid down, avoided the searchlights, and carried their homemade raft to the shoreline. Around 10:30 that night, they pushed off into the dark, icy waters of San Francisco Bay. By the time the guards discovered the dummies in their beds the next morning, the men were long gone. The prison went into full lockdown. The FBI, Coast Guard, and local police launched one of the biggest manhunts America had ever seen. Helicopters searched the bay, boats scoured the waters, and officers combed every inch of land around San Francisco. All they found were a few paddles, pieces of the raft, and a waterproof bag that held some personal items. But the men themselves were never seen again. The official story from the FBI was that Morris and the Anglin brothers drowned. The water was too cold, the distance too far, the currents too strong. Survival was impossible, or so they claimed. But not everyone was convinced. Over the years, rumors kept popping up. Some said the Anglin brothers made it all the way to South America. In 2013, a letter was sent to the FBI, supposedly written by one of the brothers. It said they survived, were living in secret, and were willing to turn themselves in for medical treatment. The FBI dismissed it as a hoax. Still, no bodies were ever found. And without proof, the case remains open in the minds of many Americans. Today, Alcatraz is no longer a prison. It shut down in 1963 and became a museum and tourist attraction. But the mystery of the escape lives on. Tour guides still tell the story, visitors still ask the question, and investigators still debate what really happened that night. To some, Morris and the Anglin brothers were criminals who deserved their fate. To others, they were masterminds who beat a system designed to crush them. One thing's for sure, in over 60 years, no one has ever proven whether they drowned in the bay, or pulled off the greatest prison escape in American history. So what do you believe? Did the three men die in the icy waters of San Francisco Bay? Or did they make it out, free men, living in secret somewhere in the world? More than 60 years later, the mystery of Alcatraz still captures our imagination. And maybe, just maybe, we'll never know the truth. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime and mystery stories every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.